All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for jumping on this month's Cyber Showcase, a conversation about unmasking vCISO myths. As you guys can probably tell, we got pretty excited about the theme here. We're excited to talk about some of these myths and traditions that are out there and how we can help dispel them a little bit. Joining me today is a newcomer to the Cyber Showcase, our sales manager, Rob Nielsen. And then I've also got what's going to become a recurring segment. Guest star here, Lindsay Ho, will be on us. For those of you who attended last month, Lindsay made her debut then and is going to be joining us to talk a little bit about marketing at the top of each of these. So we're excited about that. But Rob, I'll give you a second or two to introduce yourself here.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Rob Nielsen. I am on the sales side of things at SBS. I've been at the company for not quite 12 years, and I'm excited to be here.
Lindsay, you want to say hi real quick?
Yes, hello again, everyone. I'm Lindsay Hull. I'm the content strategist here at SBS. I joined the marketing team about a year ago, and I'm really enjoying getting to spotlight all of the ways that SBS helps to support our clients.
Great. Well, thank you both for being here. So today, as we discussed, is a conversation about vCISO and kind of the myths that surround it and how we might be able to help, things like that. We're excited to discuss it. The agenda, just pretty quick fare here, introductions. We're going through that as we speak. I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay here at the top in just a minute for what we're going to kind of endearingly call the marketing corner, so she can cover some of the stuff we're excited about putting out there for you to use. Obviously, October being Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we've got a lot of great freebies that you can grab to help yourselves, but also any of your customers that you might want to share with. And then she's got a couple other things she wants to talk about, which will be great. And then Rob and I are going to jump into a conversation about unmasking the top 5 vCISO myths that we commonly come across when we're talking to potential customers and what we're hearing in the industry, things like that. We'll hit some takeaways and then get to a Q&A if time permits toward the end here. As always, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you do have any questions or comments, go ahead and throw them in the chat or in the question and answer box that's provided. If we do have a chance, we'll get to those before the end. If not, I will be happy to follow up with you directly. And then if you don't mind, when you are done today's webinar, go ahead and take that brief survey we've got at the end, about 4 questions. That does help make sure that we get you everything you need and helps us make sure that we continue to provide good content for you going forward. So with that said, Lindsay, I think, well, let me cover this, I guess, and then we'll jump to you. I apologize. For those of you who are not familiar with us, SBS Cybersecurity, we've been in the industry for over 20 years now. We've got employees across the country. Tons of pertinent to this conversation, about 150 plus vCISO clients nationwide. And then down there at the bottom, we think this is really important. We were ranked #1 cybersecurity consulting by G2, which is a review website. So if you ever want to learn a little bit more about what our customers are saying about us, feel free to visit there. So again, if you're new to SBS or haven't heard of us, we really appreciate you being here. For anybody who is a current customer or has worked with us in the past, we obviously welcome you back as well. So with that said, now I will turn it over to Lindsay, and I'm just now realizing I'll have to click through this for you, but I promise I'll do my best. But Lindsay, you want to talk about what we've got coming up?
Yeah, excited to share what we have coming up from an education perspective. Lots of great opportunities, as always, to see what's going on in our industry. So coming up on October 22nd, we have SBS's own Justin Kurtner and Cheryl Ryan discussing how to secure and test your application programming interfaces, or APIs. They'll cover today's API economy, and they'll also talk about the risks and some expert guidance on the security controls and best practices you should follow. It should be a really good conversation. And then up next on October 29th, Nick Podorotsky, our resident Hacker Hour host, will be joined by SBS's Linda Hardup. They'll talk about all the AI strategy considerations you should keep in mind. They'll go over some opportunities and challenges that arise as organizations are starting to adopt AI. And they'll also share some tips on building an AI roadmap and how to embed trust into that process. And then finally, on November 19th, we'll have Cesar Valdez from SBS presenting on best practices for today's network architectures. And he'll cover the pros and cons of cloud computing as well, the ins and outs of a tech stack, and also how to review your IT architecture. And so we encourage you to check out those event links and register just to make sure you're getting all of our latest insights.
Now, I will just say, Lindsay, we do have that on the website. If you go to www.sbscyber.com and click on events, you'll get a drop down with everything that's coming up. And then one of the questions in that survey at the end here is whether or not you want a copy of the slide deck or recording. So if you want a copy of the deck that does have the links in that, please feel free to respond there. So, all right, we're going to talk about some of the resources we've got for Cybersecurity Month, and then some vCISO stuff, right?
That's right. It's October, so we're in the swing of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And last month, like Brett said, I shared some free resources we have available. So we're including them here as well. It makes it really easy to run a campaign without having to start from scratch. And it's not too late. We're only just over a week into October. So if you haven't already planned your educational content for this month, feel free to use some of these resources to share with your team. One I recommend starting with is what are the best methods to test employee cybersecurity awareness. It features ways to just measure how well your people are retaining those security best practices, including 10 methods you can use to evaluate their awareness, even dumpster diving. So it's a really interesting piece, and it can help you identify which approaches are resonating most with your team. And then beyond the blogs, we also have our resource library, and it's packed with posters and tip sheets, as well as some infographics that you can share with your team. And one that I'd recommend starting with is the Security Awareness Toolkit. This has links to a lot of our webinars, blogs, ebooks, and certifications, as well as tips on building a culture of cybersecurity, and also some social media post ideas that you can share on your own channel. And everything in there is really designed to be plug and play, so you can download it, distribute it on your own channels without having to ask us for permission. So we hope you get some use out of that. And then as we jump into today's topic, I also want to call out a white paper that's part of our resource library. It dives into the 5 key questions to consider when researching a vCISO solution. I think it's a great next step after today's webinar to take a look at. Inside, you'll find those 5 questions to guide your decision-making process. Those include, what is the role of the Chief Information Security Officer? What do these arrangements typically look like? What are some of the benefits of hiring a vCISO? What you should consider before choosing a partner, including a helpful proposal checklist that you can use during that process. And then also, what questions should you ask when you're actually selecting that partner? Includes a couple dozen questions that you can use during your decision-making process to go into that partnership with confidence. And the link is on this slide, and we'll share that out after this webinar, and we encourage you to check it out and hope you can use it as a guide during your vCISO search. And I'll pass it back to you, Brett.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. That was great. We look forward to having you a part of this going forward. We're always coming up with great content, most of it free. So to the extent that anybody wants to grab it or learn more about any of this stuff, we certainly encourage you to visit our website and take a peek at all the stuff we have to offer. So thank you, Lindsay, for all your great work, and obviously the entire marketing team. We have a great team that works on all this as well. All right, Rob, now it's just you and I, okay? So we'll try to get through this without making it too painful. Our focus today is unmasking vCISO myths. We thought it tied in really well with this the spooky month of October. But obviously, you and I have been with this company for 10 plus years now, plus in your case, just under for myself. And I've been talking vCISO for a long time. We obviously run into a lot of the same conversations, a lot of the same ideas about what a vCISO is and what a vCISO is not. And we thought this would be a good opportunity to just kind of highlight some of those obstacles, or maybe some of the mentality that we see, and address those as best we can. So before we get into it, obviously, it does seem like vCISO has been kind of a buzzword or a concept that really has popped up in the last few years, but this is something that's been around forever. And I know you having been here as long as you have, why don't you take us back to maybe when we started selling what we considered to be kind of the precursor for a vCISO? What did that look like, if you can remember that far back?
Yeah. Well, I think this has been our premier offering as long as SBS has been around. I would say is important to talk about, Brett. We got started when regulatory burdens were just starting in financial institutions, and community banks and credit unions really needed our assistance with basic things like, how do we audit ourselves? What's a risk assessment? How do we complete that? Those types of things. And we realized very early that a lot of organizations need assistance, but they don't all need the same assistance. So we got started with kind of an out of the box offering that would come in and essentially set up an information security program for an organization. That has obviously changed throughout the years, how we offer that, the reasons that we offer it in different ways have essentially all come from our clients and what we've seen really move the needle for them, what we've seen be most successful for them. And that's really how we've built the program to be able to step in and fulfill any role that they're needing at their organization.
Yeah, so this started as what we called maintenance accounts, which sounds like we were coming in and tightening lug nuts and stuff. But what we were really doing is kind of just making sure that they had an information security program and that we could build from there and they could build from there. Over time, that transitioned into what we called cybersecurity partnerships. That was kind of our way of talking about these and really hitting home on the fact that this was truly a partnership to us. It wasn't something where as one of the myths we'll talk about a little bit later on, we're coming in and just kind of putting our foot down and saying, this is what we're going to do. We've always kind of approached these from a cybersecurity partnership kind of perspective. And then probably in the last couple of years, we've also transitioned over to calling them vCISOs. And I don't know if you have any memories or any kind of feeling for when we made that switch and why that was important, but I'll let you jump in here if you have anything you want to add to that.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of people listening today have heard the term vCISO, and that's why we market it this way. For us, that's kind of a double-edged sword, I would say, Brett. There are a lot of probably people listening, and there are certainly a lot of people that when they hear vCISO, they in their mind think of whatever it is that they envision. And that's a double-edged sword for us. We can do as much with a vCISO or as little with a vCISO as the organization needs. So it's not necessarily a one size fits all. And I think that's sometimes the harder conversations is just to wrap our minds around what all can be, what can we get assistance with? Where can we move the needle? What are we not doing today that could be taken care of with a vCISO? And that's not necessarily outsourcing everything. That's not necessarily looking at it in that typical mindset that a lot of people have, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, just in reality, it is something where we've kind of chosen to say vCISO is the common term. That seems to be what everybody's most familiar with. But to your point, that also comes with it some of the myths that we're going to talk about and try to dispel here as well. So it certainly has been kind of a path that we started. I would say we were one of the very first to market with a program that again, eventually evolved into what a vCISO is today. But certainly there's a lot of people that offer it. There's a lot of myths that are out there that sometimes prevent people from even looking into it. And I think that hopefully by the end of today's conversation, they'll have a better feel for what it actually is. So with that said, let's jump into it. Here's vCISO myth number one. If we hire a vCISO, they're going to come in and run the show. Now, Rob, you already started to dispel this one with your previous comments, so I'm going to turn it over to you to keep going on that. But
Sure.
What do you think is the driving force behind this mindset? Why do you think people come into a conversation sometimes about a virtual CISO or a virtual ISO with the mentality of, okay, you guys are here to do the whole thing, right?
Sure. And there are some organizations that we step into that this is exactly what they want. They do not, they're bankers. They maybe don't have the resources or the staff that is as excited about these things as we are, maybe as knowledgeable as we are. And so they want us to come in and handle things for them. They want us to make sure that they're compliant. They want us to make sure that they're secure and that their information security program is running exactly like they would like it to, or they ask us, can you run it for us exactly like you think it should be run? And that's absolutely an option for us. What we see more frequently, I would say, Brett, is we're stepping in to assist in areas that they need assistance. They need expertise. They need the ball carried forward just a little bit for them. And that's not a step in and rewrite how we're doing things today, rewrite policies that we've already spent a lot of time and resources creating, really not stepping in and reinventing any wheel. What we're trying to do is step in and meet them where they need to be met. So If you've got policies and procedures and things in place that are working well, we want to know that and we want to complement that. It's not we will step in and tell you how to run your business. That's just not the situation at all.
And I think it's fair to say, and I would, if you disagree, I encourage you to jump in here, but, kind of a one size fit all approach was kind of the way we handled some of our maintenance accounts and CSP accounts early on. It was a lot of, this is what we are coming in to do. This is how we're going to help you. But what I really like about, our offering certainly, and I know there are other, companies in the industry that have taken the same approach, is what do you need? Let's meet you at your level, not necessarily come in and say, hey, we are going to run the whole show. Now, can we do that? We certainly can, or a vCISO certainly can. But the idea of being able to say, okay, well, maybe you don't need somebody that's going to come in and do all the work and make all the decisions and do all that stuff. You just need somebody to provide a little extra bandwidth. Staff augmentation. We've got an ISO potentially, or a CISO even, but we need somebody that can kind of help share the workload a little bit. We also have a version of our vCISO that's more of a guide or a mentorship, right? Where it's, coming in and saying, hey, we are going to be here. We're not going to necessarily do the work for you, but we're going to help make sure that the person that's in that role gets trained up enough where they can take that forward themselves. So I wonder, in your mind, having kind of sold both versions of it over time, what do you think is, what do you find to be so beneficial about more of that collaborative process of, let's do this together, let's find a fit for you, as opposed to, we're going to come in and we're going to do everything, whether you like it or not, kind of thing?
Yeah. I think a lot of people have a really strong information security program built. In 2025, it shouldn't be the first year for anyone that we're considering cybersecurity, information security. We're worrying about our customers and members' information. This has been front of mind for a lot of us for a long time. And a lot of organizations have built really nice programs. Obviously, as we have staffing changes, as we look at implementing new things like AI or other technologies that we may be a little bit unfamiliar with, there's just a really nice opportunity to bring in experts at times, regardless of the size and complexity of your organization, to complement what you currently have in place. And I think that's, kind of that opposite end of, we're going to come in and run the show for you, is we're going to bring some expertise and provide some guidance in the decisions that you will be making in the future. And we'll be a good sounding board for that. We've got resources that have more than likely made those decisions in the past that we can talk through what that looked like and some of the issues that they may have run into. But really what you're not having to do is reinvent the wheel every time. And you've got that expert at your fingertips, and you can use them for as much as you would like to use them for.
So with this myth, I think the key here is this is certainly an option. If you need somebody, you don't have a CISO, you don't have an ISO, or yours left, or something came up where you need somebody to fill in or be in that position, that's certainly an option. But a company like ours, and again, we're not the only one offering it in this fashion, but the ability to kind of customize and not approach it as we got one version of the vCISO and that's it, I think is a really strong argument against this being a reality. So. All right, let's talk about vCISO myth number 2 then. A vCISO is meant to replace existing staff. Now, it's kind of interesting because I do feel like, and I actually want to get your opinion on this in a minute, Rob. I'm going to get to this question actually, but I think a lot of the time the first person we talk to at an institution or organization is the person that needs help that theoretically would be the one we are replacing. But this is really never meant to replace anybody, right?
Correct. Yeah. Where we want to meet the organization is, to your point earlier, where their needs are. Oftentimes, and the majority of the time, that need is not to replace someone or even replace an entire process that you have right now, but instead make things better, strengthen the programs we have. Maybe we have certain areas that we need more hands-on. We need someone to step in with their expertise and just focus in a specific area. And maybe sit on a committee or something like that instead of act as an ISO in any way.
And I think the key here to me, and I encourage you again to jump in if you think I'm wrong here, but I'll yell at you afterwards if you do that. But I do think that the idea here is that information security is core. right? And in a lot of cases, when we're talking to smaller community banks or credit unions, or we're talking to organizations that maybe just have never really had an information security officer before, bandwidth is a real thing. And being able to make sure that they're managing all aspects of information security can be really difficult and can cause burnout. I mean, we talk a lot about statistics like the average ISO is only in the role for 18 months. And it's in some cases because they just get burnt out from everything they're doing. So, us being able to come in, or, a company like us being able to come in and provide this service is, again, meant more to augment their staff as much as it is to, maybe even fill a gap necessarily. In a lot of cases, we're working with somebody who's already been working on the program. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that is absolutely fair to say. We've had more and more organizations sign us in as more of a strategic vCISO, someone that they want to bounce ideas off of, someone that they want to talk about like I mentioned, a future project. Maybe that's implementation of Copilot, or maybe that's implementation of a new technology that we're very familiar with that's going to touch, a large portion of the organization, and they want to make sure they're rolling that out right. We're happy to step in and help with projects like that.
So, in your experience then, and having these conversations, sometimes obviously the person we're talking to is that person who is looking for assistance, is looking for additional bandwidth, is looking to offload some of the work that they're providing. If you are talking to a president or CEO or somebody who might be making the decision, and they're thinking in the back of their mind, is this going to replace that staffing? How do you approach that sort of conversation?
Sure. Yeah. So, kind of like you mentioned, Brett, when we first start talking about this, we like to have conversations with those involved at the organization to understand what's existing, what's in place. What are the changes that you're looking for? If you've got someone that's leaving, or maybe planning to leave, or considering retirement, we have a lot of those conversations with president, CEO level of, is this something that you would like to replace people, or replace a potential person that may be leaving down the road. But again, we have a lot of these types of engagements that are there to staff augment until that type of situation may arise. A lot of continuity planning happens with vCISOs for a lot of organizations. They look at down the road. This may be a change that we make in 6 or 8 months from a staffing standpoint, but there's going to be benefit until that change, and then there's going to be continuity after that change with this type of engagement in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another benefit of a program like this being scalable is the idea that there's kind of a flavor for everybody, is kind of how we've discussed in the past, right? I mean, if you have somebody that's in that position, or maybe you hired them straight out of college, or they've been on the team as a cyber analyst or something like that for a little while, and you identify those people as talented enough to eventually hold the position and the title of ISO, CISO, something like what we call our vCISO guide is a really good opportunity to have that expert be able to come in. We talked about that version of our program offering being, we're not going to, we're going to be the personal trainer. We're going to give you the weights. We're going to teach you how to do the jumping jacks, but we're not going to do the bench press for you, right? That is going to be something that we're relying on that person to be able to do. But having that mentorship, to me, and I'll ask you this here, I mean, you've sold enough vCISOs or cybersecurity partnerships or whatever we've called them in the past to I assume, see how we've actually elevated some of those internal leaders that maybe started off a little green over time to really grow into that position where we can kind of scale back a little bit further even, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, some of our best success stories from this program, we're able to step away completely, and we've trained them, and they feel comfortable handling whatever the issue is, whether it be the entire information security program that we want to get ready for the organization and be able to, hand that off and step away, or whether that be project-based, committee-based, those types of things where we're sitting in. We've had organizations that have become very successful and just, had to call us and say, it's not because you're not doing a great job, but it's because we feel like we're ready to do this on our own now and take the training wheels off, so to speak. those have been some of our best relationships and some of our most successful engagements are clients that end up just walking away from us because they don't need the level of support anymore.
Not that that happens a lot. We still love being there. We still love helping out in the long term. And to your point, they certainly, the unfortunate side of this, and I'm sure you've seen this as you've been, with the company as well, is, we do get somebody to that position and they're in a good enough shape to run it on their own as the ISO or as the CISO, and then they get an offer from somebody else, and suddenly the institution or organization is back to square one. So we certainly can continue to act as that bridge. We see a lot of people, maybe they start at one level of our vCISO and kind of ratchet back, and then we can always ratchet it back up again if we need to get more involved. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I would say the flexibility and versatility of the program, of the vCISO program, just the ability to scale up or scale down fairly quickly to meet whatever need the organization has is maybe the best piece of it. Not only are we not going to miss a meeting, call in sick, not be able to make it to work, but we're going to do a really nice job when we're there. And if you get to that point where you don't need us anymore, it's a lot easier to have a conversation with us than it is an employee that we don't need as much focus in this area as we have in the past.
So this myth I would just dispel by saying we are not here to replace existing staff. Typically what we are here to do is amplify or augment the teams that are already in place, provide additional bandwidth and expertise, maybe provide some mentorship, or potentially act as kind of a, as your ISO or CISO, if that's the best fit for you going forward. But we are more than happy to work with internal leaders to continue to grow them and allow them to be able to focus on the things they need to focus on. So I think that's hopefully another myth that has been dispelled. So let's talk about myth number 3 then. We don't need a vCISO. Our exams are fine. Now, I don't necessarily hear this a lot from the people that are doing the work. I do find I hear this a lot from probably management level. And I completely understand that. If you're getting, great examinations, great audits, maybe it's pretty easy to think, well, we don't need any help. We've got this covered. But obviously that belies the amount of work and stress that the people that are doing the work are under to make sure that's the case. So obviously this is a pretty classic one. Rob, what's the flaw in thinking that, hey, examiners say we're doing a great job, so we must not need any help?
Sure. Well, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face is a famous saying. And, obviously things change. So if we're doing a nice job today, we need to be thinking about what could change that would impact that moving forward. Again, a lot of vCISOs are put in place for continuity. They're put in place to make sure that almost as a continuity plan, if we have an issue, if we have someone leave us, if we have changes that are unforeseen, we've got the resource, the expert here that can bridge whatever that gap looks like. And so I would say, as much as anything, if you're getting ones on your exams and you're getting high fives from auditors and examiners, that's fantastic. Putting a plan in place to make sure that you don't have someone leave, you don't have a big change that's unforeseen. You may not be looking at acquisitions or mergers in the future to change your size and complexity, really looking at the future and making sure you've got the resources on staff today to get you where you want to be a year from now, 6-8 months from now is really important. And I would say when exams are going well, we want to keep them that way. And it's obviously an increasingly challenging landscape in cybersecurity. There's going to be more to think about next year than there is this year, unfortunately. That's just the reality we're living in. And I think the majority of the proactive organizations that maybe don't have a big gap to fill, but are looking to strengthen things, even if they're doing well right now, are the organizations that tend to do well long term.
So, I think we talk about a lot as a company the idea of being, kind of proactive versus reactive. That's a big theme of SBS about, going beyond the check the box mentality. So how do you explain when you're talking to a potential customer or a current client, whatever the case may be, how do you explain the difference between compliance and kind of true cybersecurity maturity?
Yeah. Well, that's That's a great question, and that could be $1 million question. We could dig into a lot of different areas with that, but I think we all know that compliance is the bare minimum. So audits, exams can be going fairly well. There are new threats all the time. Our people have issues all the time. Our processes and technologies are changing all the time these days. We've mentioned Copilot. We've mentioned other technologies that a lot of organizations are implementing. So just really making sure to get out in front of those things are important.
Yeah, and that's not to say that examiners aren't coming in and being thorough. I think a lot of them do a really good job with that, probably a better job than most people on the call want to certainly want to have to deal with, unfortunately. But I think there is a difference between the idea of, okay, we've done what's being asked of us, and okay, how do we take that then and move beyond just saying, okay, we're doing what you've asked, we're checking the boxes, to we're prepared for what's ever coming next, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about AI is the big word, big buzzword. I guess not a word, but AI is the big thing that's going around right now. I'm excited to kind of talk a little bit about that in just a few minutes, but there are challenges that are going to continue to arise. It's not as though threats are going to get any less frequent or dangerous. It's not as though new regulations. I mean, obviously there's some changes happening in that environment, but I don't anticipate those going away entirely. So the idea of being able to say, well, not only are we checking the boxes, not only are we doing the things that we need to do to be compliant, but we are taking it a step further, and we are being mature from a cybersecurity perspective. I think is critically important. And this might be a good time, Rob, for us to really talk a little bit about kind of what are some of the biggest reasons. We've talked about some of them already, but what are some of the biggest reasons you see an institution reaching out to us to have the conversation about a vCISO?
Yeah, well, what we're talking about is nothing's quick and easy, and we all know that. So anytime there's changes at an organization, whether that be a technology change or a process change, or we're implementing new things, it's not easy. So generally there's some sort of change happening, and that's whether that be an upcoming change. Like I mentioned, we have a lot of vCISOs that know there's going to be a change in the next 12 or 18 months, that want a foundation and some stability so that when that change happens, there's just some stability there. One of the most challenging positions in a bank across the United States, regardless of your location, regardless of whether you're a bank or a credit union, one of the most challenging positions to fill is an information security officer role. That's for a number of different reasons. As a society, we're just undereducated when it comes to cybersecurity and these types of topics. We're not producing college educated and trained employees as fast as they're being needed, not just across the banking space, but just in general. So it's not a quick plug and play, and it's certainly not a quick plug and play at organizations that are expecting on-site employees that live in your area to be educated and ready to just step into a role. So we're a quicker fix than finding a full-time employee, and quite frankly, we do a very nice job with that.
Yeah, I always think it breaks out into a couple of different buckets, and one of them we're going to talk about, I think, in a myth that's coming up. So I don't want to cover it just yet, but turnover is a big thing. These are, as you highlighted there, these are people that are in demand. So even if you have somebody on your team that you're really confident in, really happy with, the potential of them being gone at really any point in time because they got a different offer from another organization or institution is a reality. Hiring is very difficult. To your point, being able to find people that are qualified to be that information security officer, let alone chief information security officer, is very difficult, especially as we get into some rural areas or more kind of places that might be hard to attract top end talent necessarily for this role. And then just they're not all bad reasons either. I mean, we want to grow. We want to add new technologies and new services and new solutions, and we want to make sure that we're providing everything we need to our customers. But we also want to do that securely, right? We want to make sure that we've got our bases covered. We want to make sure that we're doing the things we need to do so that as we are growing, we feel comfortable that we're not going to fall victim to some of these cyber incidents that are out there. So, I think those are really critical elements that people need to consider. And again, this doesn't mean that this has to be the solution you have forever, but certainly it's a good stopgap, and it's an option for you as you continue to move forward. So I think that's a critical component as well. So in terms of this myth, I would probably just cap this one off by saying, hey, having great examinations is an awesome thing. We want to make sure you are, and if you are, that's great. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're truly mature from a cybersecurity perspective. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get help for what's coming down the road, or as you continue to grow. Certainly there are some gaps that can be filled as well. All right, number 4, a vCISO is just someone who's going to call us once in a while and send in reports. Now, to me, obviously, this is a concern about out of sight, out of mind, right? So, and it can be a fair one. I want to be clear about that. If you don't have somebody coming in on a regular basis, I can understand where people would get concerned about that. How productive is a vCISO being? If I'm one of a handful of vCISO clients that they actually have, how much time are they dedicating to me? So maybe, Rob, do you want to talk a little bit about how we've structured our program? Again, we're not the only people that offer vCISOs, but in terms of how we've structured our program to be kind of proactive versus a, hey, call us when you need us kind of consultant. What do you think that looks like, and how do we talk to our customers about it?
Yeah, the conversations we have with every single one of our vCISO clients, the conversations we have up front are the most important. So more so than some of our competition and others who offer these types of programs. Again, we're not an out of the box type offering. We really want to know, exactly what we're going to be working on, where we're going to be meeting them, how much of the work we're going to be taking and doing. A big part of those conversations up front are scoping the amount of time that we're going to spend and scoping how we're going to communicate with the bank or the credit union or whoever it is that we're working with. I think having those conversations up front and making sure that the way in which we communicate, the frequency in which we communicate is predetermined, really holds us to the standard that we hold ourselves to, and really takes away a lot of that confusion once we really roll up our sleeves and get going in the program.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback off that, I think one thing that I've talked to people in the past that have said we've had consultants where they're just there. It's almost like they're on retainer. They'll sit there, and if we have to call them for something, we'll call them for something. That's truly not the way we operate our vCISO, and I would hope most of the companies that are out there that are offering this service don't do that either. And I think a big part of that is that setting of expectations and the clarity around the scope and what are we going to be working on and what are the deliverables and those sorts of things. And I think this is a good opportunity to even kind of talk about vendor management selection and how important that is. So, if you were hiring a vCISO, Rob, what are some of the things that you would consider or some of those components you'd think about?
Yeah, as far as what's included, sorry, I just want to clarify.
Well, just in terms of, if you were considering, a company or two companies, what would be a standout, like, I need to make sure this is, I need to feel sure I'm comfortable with this company. What would you be looking for that would make you feel comfortable?
Yeah, great question. First of all, just company history and qualifications. So obviously you want to be talking to a company that understands your business, your organization, your goals, what you want to accomplish as an organization. With cybersecurity controls, we can spend a lot of money putting controls in place, but having a consultant that's on the same page as you, that really understands where you're trying to get as a business and can help get you there is very important. I would, back to when we're having these pre-discussion conversations, if you're talking to multiple organizations about stepping in and potentially being your vCISO, listen to the questions they're asking you. Listen to the offerings that they're bringing you, and listen to the experience that they've had in the past. A lot of organizations right now are throwing out this buzzword, and some make a lot of promises that may or may not be possible. I think one thing that we've learned over the last 20 years is we can't be too rigid. We need to meet the organization where it's going to help them the most and where they want to be met. But also, we're going to be the expert when we're handling those roles. And if we sign up for doing something, we're going to be sure that we can do the job and do the job well. and we're going to put that in scope. So just making sure that you're not being promised deliverables that either haven't been done before or they're not capable to deliver.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I also think that it's almost like you're hiring a person, right? I mean, we sell IT audits, we sell network security audits. We want to talk about those with everybody certainly as well. Quick plug, if you're looking for any of those services to round out the year, please let us know. But unlike that, where we're coming in and we're actually doing a test, or we're reviewing their network, or we're trying to do some social engineering or something, this is you basically bringing a person on your team, right? This is one of the things, one of probably 2 or 3 offerings we have as a company where it is basically staff augmentation. So you are bringing somebody into your culture. You are bringing somebody in that you need to make sure is going to fit with your company and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish, and even the personalities, right? Are we working with somebody who is going to mesh well with the personalities we have at our institution or organization? So would you agree with the sentiment that this is basically you kind of approach it like you would if you were hiring somebody?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our most successful engagements are those who want to work with, want to talk to, want to keep involved the consultant from our side. And yeah, I would 100% agree with that.
And I would just also add to the maybe get more to the point of this myth here is, we've been very clear about we're going to deliver, we're going to set expectations, we're going to set up a scope, we're going to, build out a work plan in advance that says this is when we're going to work on this is when we're going to work on that. Our vCISO is very much we are going to be communicating with you regularly. We're going to stay on task. We're going to get the deliverables that we've promised. And if something pops up and something unforeseen or an exam or audit finding surprises, everybody, we can always fill that in. We get that in the plan and we address that and things get moved around. But any good vCISO is going to come in and build out a program, build out a plan that says, this is how we're going to attack this. This is what your needs are. This is what your exams look like, your audits look like, any findings, recommendations, policies, procedures. We're going to build this out in advance and we're going to attack it kind of from the top down. So, finding a vCISO who's not just going to sit there and wait by the phone for you to call, but really be able to be proactive about it, I think is a really critical component. All right, the fifth myth. Wow, that's a tough one. A vCISO is too expensive for our size. Now, this is obviously a big one, that the service is too expensive or that the size of the organization or institution is a significant factor. So let's kind of break those up one at a time. What can make a vCISO a more cost-effective solution for an institution that maybe doesn't have somebody in that role already?
Yeah, so I would say the flexibility of our program takes care of a lot of this. Again, we want to know what the issue or pain point is that you're trying to fix, and we can step in to that extent. A number of organizations that have out of the box kind of one size fits all programs, their lowest price point may be more expensive than your organization can afford. That's why we try to meet you where your needs are. And we do have, Brett, quite frankly, we're clear under $10,000 a year, all the way up over $100,000 a year, depending on what the scope looks like, what you need accomplished and what you don't need accomplished. So I would say, I don't know that I've ever had a conversation with an organization that at the end of it didn't think we could take away a number of their pain points within their budget in the vCISO. That's not going to be the case across the industry necessarily. But I do think that kind of goes back to when you're talking to people, just understand if they are willing to pivot, willing to be flexible, and willing to meet you where you need to be met. But a vCISO should not be viewed only as a full-time 40-hour-a-week type of position. There are a lot of different ways that a vCISO can work and fit into your organization at a lower price point that really brings impact.
Absolutely. And I think that it's just the concept of this, it's supply versus demand, right? You hit on this on a previous myth we talked about, which is there's just not enough people, qualified people, for the roles that are out there. every financial institution in the country needs an ISO or a CISO, or somebody that can act in that role. Pretty much every FTC regulated company or business needs somebody that can act in that role. So there's really plenty of opportunity out there if you are in this space, to be able to really pick and choose where you want to operate. So a vCISO does get rid of a lot of that, right? We're not going to take holidays. We're not, or we will take holidays. We're not going to take vacations where you don't have somebody to fill in, I guess I should say. We're not going to get sick and call in. We're going to have somebody to backfill that if it comes up. The idea of a vCISO is just kind of, it eliminates some of those hidden costs, the benefits, the things like that come with having somebody in that role that can, demand a pretty big salary for the fact, just by the fact of, or by the virtue of having that supply versus demand issue. So, I think that's a really critical thing to understand here, is that in a lot of ways, the vCISO can be less expensive than a full-time staffer. And I hate the way this question is going to be phrased, but I see no way around it at this point, Rob. So does size matter when it comes to cybersecurity?
Size and complexity is going to matter to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, security is security. The X's and O's are going to be the same. We need to execute. And so the short answer is no. The more complex answer is, as we get into things, size and complexity matters, and that's where you'll want an expert to really guide you through those hoops.
Yeah, and I think that's a great answer to kind of straddle the line there for sure. I think that it's the important thing to know is that you're a threat, you're a target rather, no matter what, right? I mean, that when it comes to cyber criminals or bad guys that are out there that are trying to gain access to networks or be able to exploit weaknesses, they don't necessarily look at an institution that's really tiny and say, well, we're not going to touch them. That's just a small community bank. That doesn't happen, right?
Correct. We're all an IP number to those guys online, to those people online, and equal opportunity. If we're a financial institution, it's not going to matter if you're in a small community in Ohio or if you're in New York City or LA. At the end of the day, we're all accessible online, and obviously, there are people coming at us.
So for this one, I think we would just address it and try to dispel it by saying any good company that's going to offer a service like this probably is going to have the flexibility to be able to cater to the need that's out there. So if you do want somebody to step in, we've talked about this a bunch, so we're kind of reiterating ourselves here to some degree, but if you need somebody to step in and run the program from start to finish, that's something that can be offered. If you're just looking for somebody to provide some additional bandwidth and maybe pick up some slack in certain areas, or maybe we hate writing policies and procedures. We need somebody to do that for us. This is, there is an option for that. If it's just mentorship, if it's just, hey, we need somebody to come in and we've got somebody on the team that we're excited about, but they're a little green and we need to get them where they need to be, that's an option. All the way down to, we just need a sounding board. We want to be able to bounce ideas off people. I think there is a vCISO for everybody, frankly. And I think to your point, Rob, I don't think it, while expense is something that gets considered right up at the top of a lot of conversations that I've been involved with, by the time we get to the end and we've really listened to the problems that are out there and the goals of the organization or institution, I think we generally can find a common ground in terms of costs. So I don't think this is a totally accurate one as well. All right. I'm excited about this one. We've got a bonus myth for you. So I said top 5. You're getting a free bonus myth here on your free webinar. Assistance like this doesn't exist for AI usage. Now, I'm putting this one in here to kind of to lead the witness a little bit, but we are in the process of starting to roll out what we call our, this is a long name and maybe not the best name, our vCISO program. Virtual Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer. Again, a lot of words in there, but that's the way it's built. Obviously, this is something we're really excited about. We've been building it for probably the last 2 years. I want to talk a little bit about kind of where we started and why we think this is important. But Rob, as a person who's been on the sales team for a long time and kind of sees where this industry is going and where AI is taking us, what makes you excited about an offering like this?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier how hard change is. And when it's uncertain change, it's even more difficult. It's more difficult for us as leaders. It's more difficult for business leaders to know that we're making the right decisions and maybe steering the ship in the right direction. There's a lot of unknown with AI right now. And anyone that tells you any different is flat out lying to you. But what we do know and what we have learned about AI can give us some nice jumping off points. And SBS's stance is AI is here to stay, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But just burying our head in the sand is not going to enable us to keep up with our competition and with those around us. So we've had a lot of organizations ask us about AI. And like we always do at SBS, we take customer feedback. We take the information that we're getting in our conversations with you guys who are on the call listening, and we try to bring a solution that's going to help you move forward. And we've had so many organizations that have, quite frankly, let us know, other than maybe looking online at some best steps and best practices, they're just not sure how to roll AI out or where it's safe to roll AI out. And obviously, our consultants are working through this every day and really eager to help organizations with building a program, with building some policies and procedures, and really kicking things off on the right foot with AI so that you don't stub your toe on the way out of the gate.
Absolutely. I'm going to lay out in just a minute kind of what some of the scope looks like for this offering. And again, it's kind of relatively new. We've rolled it out. We've got it working in a couple of institutions that we've been working with for quite some time. We've started kind of with our vCISOs. That seems to be a good fit as a starting point. But what I think are the impression that or how I feel about AI, I guess the best way to put it is, not only is it here to stay, but it is something that does have clear and significant benefits. That's not to say that, roll out of bed and launch an AI program that's going to make all of your loan decisions for you. I don't think that's necessarily what we're recommending right out of the gate. But even the low-hanging fruit, the ability to find a way to make your team 3% more efficient. What could you do if everybody on your team had an extra hour or two in their day? How much more work could you get done? How much more effective and efficient could your team be? And thus, how much more effective could your growth be? I think that, those are the things that we're talking a lot about, from, as little as, hey, I need a transcription tool. I have a bunch of meetings. I don't want to have to be constantly taking notes. I want to be able to have a conversation and not constantly looking down at my notepad. I want to be able to actually talk to people, but I do want to have those notes recorded. Those are summarized. I think that's, obviously something that teams can do, that Copilot can do. Helping write emails or rewrite emails, or helping us build out policies and procedures, things like that. I definitely think there's an appetite for this in a lot of institutions, which is great. But it's how to do it securely is the next step, right, Rob? It's how do we make sure that we're doing this, but we're doing it the right way, and we're not just going out and we are kind of just blowing the doors open. We're going to do whatever we want. We're going to find a way to do this responsibly. And then I would ask you to touch on a little bit. We hear a lot about shadow AI, and whether you like it or not, you may say, hey, team, we're not using AI. We're putting our foot down. People are using AI, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The adoption of AI is happening fast. More and more people are using it every day, every week, every month. And the truth is, if you have a no AI policy at your organization, your employees are using it anyway. Probably your high performing employees are using it anyway. And you're going to want safeguards around that. If they're using it on their own devices, if they're connecting that back to work in any way, just having an idea that people are going to be using this. How can we guide them, coach them to use it, but to use it in a safe way for our organization?
So we've kind of developed a 10-step process, which seems like a lot of steps, but it does seem to be pretty effective so far. We're really excited about it. As I mentioned, this is a process that we've started probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, where we started to really incorporate AI in our daily lives here at SBS, using it smartly, using it securely, using it to be more efficient. But it all starts with building out an AI team, right? Finding leaders on the team, finding stakeholders, finding people that'll be champions, putting them in a room together and start having conversations about what can we do? What benefits can we get from this? So looking at each department and understanding what are the best use cases. So as part of this program, that's kind of our starting point, coming in and building out that AI team. Understanding what you have, what you've already got that's got AI incorporated in it. Even if you decide you're not going to use AI, that doesn't mean your vendors aren't using AI. That doesn't mean you don't have tools that have AI in them. Just to be completely honest with you, and you probably guys, anybody that's on this call that's a track user, we will be bringing, AI to track in the very near future. Now, we'll be able to turn that on and off as you need it, but certainly everything's going to have AI in it at some point. It just feels that's the direction we're going. So understanding what you have, creating a game plan, where do we want to get to, not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. We want to help choose those right AI projects, what makes the most sense. Coming in, as I mentioned, starting with some of that low-hanging fruit, finding some of that. How do we make you more effective and efficient? And then building other use cases down the road as we continue to mature. Managing the risks, setting the rules. We want to help build out policies and procedures as it pertains to AI. What does the usage look like? Creating guidelines around that. Selecting the right partners and tools. We want to make sure that as you're bringing on companies that have AI or use AI, that you're doing it the right way. And picking the right people, training your team. I think half the battle internally, and I admit fully, I fall victim to this sometimes myself, is, I start to type out an email to our operations team, and then I say, wait, I can just ask Copilot. And then I sit there, I type in one sentence to Copilot, and it spits back exactly what I need, which saves me time, saves our team time. But again, that does require some retraining of your brain to be able to say, I don't have to ask Rob about this. I can ask Copilot about this. Encouraging the teamwork, encouraging champions, as I mentioned, to kind of step forward and continue to build going forward, going into the future, and then keeping on that improvement. So continuing to build out that strategy. What does it look like well into the future? So really excited about this offering. We're starting to roll it out. We're starting to have the conversations. I would say I've been involved in almost all of them at this point, and I've seen kind of three buckets. I've seen the institutions or organizations that say, we want nothing to do with it, but we know our vendors are doing it, so we kind of have to figure it out. I've talked to people that said, you know what, we're starting to get interested in it, but we're not really sure where we want to go with it. We're not getting a ton of pressure to build it out, but we know it's coming, so we want to get a jump start on that. And then I've also talked to some institutions that are gung-ho about it, and they recognize we are going to get a ton of benefit from this. And if we're the first people in our area, the first institution or organization that's using this and using it to help our customers and gaining efficiencies, as long as we're doing it securely, we can get a head start on everybody. So it's been a really interesting set of conversations so far, and I'm really excited about what the future holds for this program. So we do have a question as part of our survey. If you're interested in getting more information about that vCISO offering, please do check the yes box there, and we'd be happy to follow up. But again, another myth that we've dispelled here, that existence for this for AI doesn't exist like it does for vCISO. We absolutely are on the way to help there. All right, so we are coming up on the hour mark. Just some takeaways for today. There are many myths about vCISOs, but almost all of them can be overcome with the right partner and the right approach. They are not or should not be meant to be a one-size-fits-all solution. Again, kind of scalable based off of the needs and goals of the organization or institution. In reality, every single person, every single organization or institution on this call could use help in some form or fashion. That's not to say you all need vCISOs potentially, but certainly there's a lot of help that can be provided by one. We do offer a customizable solution that fits all the needs that are out there. And then for anybody looking to implement AI safely and securely, help is on the way, and we're excited about offering that. So with that said, we will start wrapping things up. Here's our contact information. So if you're interested in reaching out to Rob or myself or Lindsay to learn about more of the marketing side of things and some of the content that we've got out there, please feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to respond. Probably won't get to questions on the call today, but I promise we will follow up directly with you. Really appreciate everybody's time today. Hopefully your Cybersecurity Awareness Month is going well. if there's anything we can help with on that front, or as we're getting close to the end of the year, if you need help with an IT audit or network security testing or anything like that, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to assist with that as well. But Lindsay, Rob, really appreciate your time today. Hopefully this was helpful. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you next month on the Cyber Showcase.